Good afternoon, and welcome to the University of Toronto Mississauga's webinar on online privacy and security for families, children, and youth. My name is Kristen Lovell, and I'm the Director of Alumni Relations at UT Mississauga. We have alumni and friends from all over the world watching today's event, from Pakistan, the Netherlands, Portugal, Trinidad, Mexico, Kenya, and all across Canada and the United States. Welcome, everyone. Before we begin, I'd like to take a quick audience poll to see if this is your first time attending a UTM webinar. You should all see the poll on your screens now, and we'll just keep it there for a few more seconds to get all our responses in, and let's close the poll. Thanks. So I see there's quite a few of you who are returning viewers, so thank you for joining us again today, and welcome to our new guests. Today's webinar will help increase your awareness of potential vulnerabilities, share simple steps and tools to secure your children's digital devices and protect their privacy. I'm delighted to introduce today's speaker, Ryan Duquette. Ryan is the Canadian lead for RSM Canada's Security and Privacy Risk consulting practice. He focuses on litigation support, cyber incident response, privacy and cyber technology risks, digital forensics, and cyber fraud matters. He works closely with clients involved in workplace investigations and civil litigation matters, including intellectual property theft, HR investigations, and data breaches. Ryan is a seasoned professional with over 20 years of experience within the investigations and cybersecurity fields, and was previously a police officer focusing on cybercrime and fraud cases. Ryan has been qualified as an expert witness on numerous occasions. He provides cyber thought leadership to clients across multiple industries and is a frequent presenter at fraud, digital forensics, cybersecurity, and investigative conferences worldwide. Following Ryan's presentation, there will be a moderated Q&A with the audience. We just ask that you hold off on submitting your questions until after the presentation is finished, as Ryan may answer your question during his talk. And I'm delighted to introduce U of T Mississauga alumna, Hannah Tarek, who will serve as our Q&A moderator. Hannah is a lawyer with Biseglia and Associates Professional Corporation, where she maintains a broad-based litigation practice, focused principally in the areas of construction law, commercial disputes, debt enforcement, and insurance claims. Hannah appears regularly before the Ontario Superior Court of Justice and has represented clients at the Ontario Divisional Court and the Ontario Court of Appeal as co-counsel. She earned her Bachelor of Science in Psychology from U of T Mississauga in 2004 and her Bachelor of Laws from York University's Osgoode Hall Law School in 2008. She's also served on the U of T Mississauga Alumni Association Board of Directors since 2015. Hannah is also the mother of 3 children who enjoy social media and online gaming. So now Hannah and I are going to turn off our cameras, and over to you, Ryan, for your presentation.
Thank you very much. It's a absolute pleasure to be here today. And I hope everybody is staying safe in these perilous times. So just give me 1 second. I will start my presentation here. So anyways, I came home after a night shift from being a police officer and crawled into bed at 7 o'clock in the morning. And, very, very tired and turned off my light and went to sleep. And, most of my family and friends knew not to bother me at that time, not to call me at, in the morning because I needed my sleep. All of a sudden, my phone rang. I don't know if we can hear the audio, probably can't hear the audio going on here, but my phone rang and I stumbled around in the darkness trying to find my phone, and I finally found it and answered my phone, and I was very groggy and I said, hello, and I wasn't sure who it was. And the other person on the other side of the phone, sort of a Bond villain type sounding person, said, Mr. Duquette, with a very deep European accented voice. And I said, I perked up a little bit and I said, well, who is this? And he said, I'm the person that you were trying to find last night. And I really perked up at that point and said, well, I'm a police officer and I want to speak with you about something. And he said, I don't want to talk to you. And by the way, I have a friend that can run this number and tell me where you live. And it was truly at that moment that I really recognized that we all use devices and we all use computers and phones in our everyday life. And it was really at that point that I truly realized that I needed to do a lot more from a privacy perspective to protect myself and protect my family because of the dangerous work that I was doing and dealing with criminals. I didn't want any criminal to know where I lived. So that was a bit of a wake-up call for me. So ever since then, I've really been pushing and focusing on privacy matters for people. So welcome to online privacy and security for families, children, and youth. There was already an introduction about me, so I won't go into this, but my background is in law enforcement, and I've been doing this type of work for about 20 years. Most of the work we do now is obviously with organizations in the private realm, helping organizations with their cybersecurity and responding to breaches. But this realm and protecting people and protecting families is a passion of mine. I really quietly enjoy doing this. So thank you again to the University of Toronto at Mississauga for inviting me out to do this. I'm going to be going through a lot today, and I'm going to be giving you a lot of tidbits and a lot of information, and you might want to write it all down, and feel free to do that if you'd like. However, if you just want to sit back and enjoy this presentation and think about it without scrambling and writing every slide down, feel free to email me, and I'll happily give you all the things that I'm going to be talking about in this presentation. I'll do up a little email and write everything down to you. And for those of you that are on social media, please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn or Twitter. Those are the two main platforms that I belong to. So, I do these sorts of presentations not only to protect others, but also these are the two that I protect as well. And they would probably kill me if they saw this picture. This was taken some years ago, but I teach my own children about everything that we're going to talk about today, and they are well versed in the world of privacy and protecting themselves. So it is a joy when they come to me and they say, we saw this issue, we want to talk about it, or we need some help with this. So this is who I'm protecting. I love that picture. So whenever I talk to families about cybersecurity and protecting their children, this is what we think of, and this is what families think of. And this is a predator who was arrested for kidnapping an 11-year-old child, and he was masquerading as a 13 or 14-year-old girl and having communications on a game with an 11-year-old child, and convinced her to come and meet the 13-year-old girl, and, oh, my dad will come pick you up, or something like that. So he was arrested, but this is always what we think of. So the things we are going to talk about today, obviously will help with this, but will obviously help just protect you in general from all the different threats that are out there. I do have a lot of friends that contact me and say, Ryan, my friends want to play, or my kids want to play this new game, whatever it is. And I'm sure most of your parents out there are looking at this slide going, oh yeah, my kids play all of these all the time. And a lot of the games that our children play nowadays have chat functionalities built into them. And they are online games where you are playing with complete strangers. You're not just playing with your friends. So that is the challenge that we deal with today. However, when my friends call me and say, this one game, what do you think about this? And what are my concerns about that? I try not to go down that path of trying to dissect every single game or every single platform or things like that, because there'll just be another game tomorrow that we'll have to deal with. There'll just be another chat program tomorrow, or another TikTok tomorrow that we'll have to deal with. So instead of picking apart individual programs or individual games, what I do is I try to teach my children about privacy overall. And I think back to, when all of us were children, and it was, stranger danger, don't talk to strangers. I know when I was in school, and, what my parents taught me, they didn't dissect every single scenario. Okay, if you're on the street, this is how you deal with strangers. If you're in the mall, this is how you deal with strangers. If you're in a store, this is how you deal with strangers. If a stranger calls, it was just don't talk to strangers overall, right? So I try to enforce privacy in general. And just talking about that, then it doesn't matter what game, what application you are using. If your children have privacy on the brain and you have privacy on the brain, then it doesn't matter, right? So there are certain things that I like my kids, and I suggest for you as well that you talk to your children. These are the types of things that I want your children and you to guard very, very heavily. Your age, date of birth, phone numbers, addresses, email address, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. Schools, your name even potentially, and any other identifying information. because, targets out there, criminals or predators, will pick apart little tiny little things and add up those puzzle pieces, so to speak. So really try to protect this information. And if you can say any sort of situation that you're in, if you're protecting this sort of information, it'll go a long way. Now, I do get a lot of parents say to me, well, Ryan, my kids use incognito mode or private browsing mode on their browser. Chrome, Firefox, or whatever browser you're using has these types of modes. Isn't that fine? And I'm like, well, no, not really. All these, modes, the only thing that they are system, so they really don't help in this regard. So I'm going to go through in this presentation, like I said, every single slide is almost going to be something new that you're probably going to want to do or go check or things like that. So, instead of writing it all down, just feel free to contact me if you'd like. The one thing that I like to tell parents, and I think you should do this, personally in your business and definitely for your kids, we all use credentials and we reuse credentials, username and password normally. We like to reuse our passwords all over the place. And that is such a bad habit to get into. And we're going to talk about password managers later. But what I suggest to people is they go and they look up to see if their username and password has ever been involved in a breach. So what happened there is you use your email and a password on some sort of platform or social media or for something, and that organization has been breached and that information is now publicly available. Well, if that username and password, if you use that same password on other platforms, criminals and others, can go and look up your password and then just go log in as you somewhere else. Right. So I highly suggest that you go. There's a few sites. Have I Been Pwned is one of them. And you can actually put your email addresses in here. And if they ever are involved in a breach, it will notify you. It will tell you this email was involved in a breach here. You might want to go change, your passwords or whatnot. So great site to go check. The other one is called Dehashed. And this is, again, a very similar site. It has a database of breached passwords. This one does cost a little bit, but the nice thing about this one, it will tell you for free if you've been involved in a breach. But the nice thing about this one, for I think a very, very minor cost, it will actually show you the password if it was publicly available that was used, so you can go change it. So here's some old, Hotmail accounts that I've used, and you can see that over the years they've been involved in breaches, and there was some information there that was available. On some of them, however, there's more information, and you can see on this one it actually provides an IP address as well, which, while that's not going to show where I live, it's going to show my service provider. Another little puzzle piece that people can put together. If they wanted to, commit a crime against you or something like that in the cyber realm. So highly suggest you go to these sites, check yours and your kids' email addresses, see if they've been involved in a breach. If they have, and the passwords are publicly available or they're listed, change those passwords and please don't use them anywhere else. The other thing that I'm going to suggest on the variety of your application or your phones or your computers that you use, desktops, it's not so much of a problem, but if it's a laptop or a phone especially, is only connect to Wi-Fi that you want to. Ask the machine to ask you to connect to other publicly or open Wi-Fis. I only really connect to two places, my workplace and my home, automatically. I ask my systems to ask me to connect to other places. And at least it's a bit of a know-how, and I can check to make sure that what I'm connecting to is actually legit. So again, I'm in this presentation, I'm not going to walk you through how to do this, but that's easily available. You can just Google this and it'll tell you how to do it. I think as parents, there are also other things that we should be concerned of and things that we can be doing to protect our children. One of the things that I talk a lot about is IoT devices. All these, cameras and other devices that we love to buy. And they're great, right? A lot of these, but some of them come with inherent security vulnerabilities. There's lots of stories out there about, baby monitors, for example, that people buy, they bring home, and they are easily hacked into. Some of them, right? And in cases like this, people were able to hack into them, see the video, talk through them to the baby, scream at the baby and whatnot, which obviously is horrible. So if you are going to buy some of these devices, just do a little bit of research up front to make sure that they have done their due diligence when it comes to security and securing these things. The other thing that we need to do as parents is be careful of, what we are giving our children as toys. A lot more toys now are, again, IoT, Internet of Things toys, and are internet, capable of hooking up to the internet. Right? There are toys out there, such as this one, that will have a conversation with your child and is Wi-Fi enabled. So that conversation is going somewhere, right? And kids say the darndest things sometimes, especially when they're angry with you. So just be a little bit careful about the types of toys that you're buying your children, and if they are Wi-Fi enabled and they're able to be connected to the internet. Just make sure you know what is being shared to whatever organization you're buying it for. I saw a trend start probably 4 years ago now, and I seem to see more of it every single year. And it normally starts in September, where parents are incredibly proud of their children, starting school and posting pictures of, my child is starting in this school, they're starting in kindergarten. I'm so proud of this, and that's great. We're all proud of our children for doing that. The question begs, though, is do you need to publicly share that information with the entire world? And in situations like this, I was able to find this online. It had the children's full names, it had the school they go to, it had the grade that they're in, and it had their teachers' names as well on there. So, from a safety perspective, I have concerns with this because it doesn't take somebody very long. It took me about 2 minutes to jump on Google Maps and actually see these people's homes, figure that out where they live, just based on their names, which was in that picture, and the local school. And I figured that out. And I also went to the school and I found all the listing of, everybody that works at that school. So if I was going to be, masquerading as somebody, pretending to be a parent or something, I have all the information needed, right? The child's name, the teacher's name, the information, the address, a whole bunch of information, parents' names, whatnot. So again, I know we're all proud and we want to share things about our children, but just be careful about how much you're sharing. Stepping back again to those cameras, and I talked a little bit earlier about Internet of Things cameras sharing information. This picture was taken from a database of publicly available cameras that people install in their homes, and they don't secure them. There are multiple sites out there where you can go and see thousands of these cameras that are available for the entire world to see. And as you can see in this one, there is a child's desk sitting right there. So, I didn't want to show the child, but I've looked at this feed before, and there's families walking around and there's children sitting there and whatnot. And to me, that's really scary as well. I don't want the whole world being able to look inside my house and watch my children doing things in their room. So if you do buy these, IoT cameras that are available that you can look on your smartphone and watch them forever in the world, just make sure they're locked down and take some safety precautions, please. In this day and age, when a lot of kids, especially around Ontario, we are all of our kids are, learning from home now and having to, use different platforms and logging in on devices and whatnot. Which I think is going fairly well. From the most parents I've talked to, they're like, yeah, we're moving along nicely. I do have some concerns, though, when it comes to not only has there been some hacks into these platforms recently, that was just in the news last week, but I'm also very cognizant about what my kids have behind them on these platforms and what they are sharing on video. It's only for the class. But again, if somebody was able to get in, like it happened last week, to one of these platforms, there may be things behind your child sitting there that might give away, their location or other things. Or the other larger concern that I see all the time is, they have the audio on, and parents are walking around having conversations, and the audio is on, and the entire school or classroom is at least listening to parents' conversations. So it's just something to be cognizant of, that when when your child is learning, make sure maybe you can hide some of the things in the background a little bit. Going back to passwords, one of the questions that came up earlier was about using password managers, and I get this question a lot. And I am a huge proponent for using password managers because we are all creatures of habit, and we all share our passwords everywhere, or not share them, but use the same password across multiple platforms. And that is inherently a bad practice because, like I said, if one of those places gets breached and that password becomes available, criminals and attackers will try to take that username and password and try it everywhere else. And if we're using the same password and the same email across all of our platforms, they're going to get in everywhere and lock us out and do very nefarious things. So use different passwords everywhere. And that's very challenging unless you have a password manager. These are just a few of them. There are others out there. I use one of these on this screen. But again, do some due diligence and choose one carefully. There are some out there that were designed to actually harvest your passwords and not one of the reputable ones. So I would use a reputable one. The other thing I suggest is to use two-factor authentication, and that is another method of authenticating yourself. So it's not just your username and password. It's getting a text message or having to type in a code to do that. This is a great site that you can go to that will literally walk you through how to set up two-factor authentication across the board, almost everywhere, all social media platforms, cloud storage locations, variety of different places. It will walk you through how to do it. And I'm a big fan of doing that. So even if somebody outside got a hold of your email and password, if they went to log into one of those accounts and they didn't have your two-factor code, they can't get in. So it's just another security measure that we can use. I'm sure a lot of you use a VPN at your workplace, but I am also a huge fan of using a VPN at home. Again, this is an example of just one VPN, virtual private network. And in essence, what a VPN does is it encrypts all of your traffic, going from the internet, and it masks your IP address. There are, again, a variety of different VPN providers out there. I would, again, do some due diligence and make sure that you are using an appropriate one. And I normally suggest buying one of these or paying for this service for a variety of reasons. You're going to get faster bandwidth, faster speeds. It's going to be a more reputable company, things like that, rather than using some of the free ones out there. And as you can see in this screen here, it's not connected. And then if I go to the next screen, I just bounced my internet traffic going through Australia. So my IP address is hidden coming through Australia, and it encrypts all your traffic as well. So very, very easy to do. They're not expensive. I have some of these tools on my home devices and also on my phones. Very, very simple to do. Just one click for you to enable the VPN. Obviously, you still need to install, security software on your devices. This is more, I would say, for, laptops and desktops, rather than phones. There are security software for phones, but there are certainly more of them for our computers. Again, it depends on what system you're using, what you want to protect. Here are some of the more well-known ones out there. And, some of these you can have more than one on your system. I know I'm a big fan of Malwarebytes and Windows Defender, sort of using that as a combination. But again, you can use a variety of different antivirus or software security tools out there. The other thing that I suggest, not only for you, but also for your kids, is to not make yourself or your children the administrators on your computer. The computer I'm on right now is my personal computer, and I am not the administrator on it. Yes, I do have administrator access, but I set myself up as a user on that computer. If I need to make any major changes, yes, I need to type in the administrator password, but I'm a user. And when you are a user on the computer and not the administrator, you normally have slightly less privileges, right? You can't do everything as the administrator. So if somebody was able to get into your devices, yes, they can escalate privileges, but it might just be one more thing that slows them down a little bit. From a children's perspective, I'm a big fan of somewhat controlling what my children install on their devices. So I make them users, not administrators on the computer. And then when they want to install something, they come to me and they say, Dad, can I install this? I'm like, what is it? Can I look it up? Can I go and check into it a little bit? And I'm like, yes. And I go and I type in the administrator password and they can install it. So it works out fine. There are now, children nowadays using iPads, iPhones, Android devices, portable devices. They are all using apps, smartphone apps and whatnot. And a lot of these apps come with inherent security and privacy concerns, at least from my perspective. There are hundreds of these apps that are monitoring us through our phones, through our cameras, through our locations. So I'm going to walk you through, and I'm just going to show you some examples from an iPhone. The exact same thing on an Android that you can go and take a look at, but I didn't want to get multiple platforms here. So as you can see from a data privacy perspective, in the privacy area, there are multiple areas here that you can see. Photos, apps that have access to your photos, to your contacts, to your microphone, to your camera. I highly suggest you go into your children's devices and yours and take a look at these settings to see what apps are accessing your various things. I turn off almost everything. As you can see in this example, all these different things had read and write access to photos. From a camera perspective, the same thing. Again, here's a picture of all the different apps that are using, or accessing a camera. I turn off almost everything. And then when I go to use that app, it says, wait a minute, we need to use your camera. Okay. And then I'll go turn it on. And then, when I'm done with it, I'll turn it off. I'm a fan of doing that rather than allowing everything full access to my camera at any given time. Again, location services is another one. Some location services I do, especially on your children's devices, I do encourage turning on, such as find my iPhone and find my friends, things like that. So if you are sharing your location with your children, or what I do with my children is I have them share their location with me so I can see on my phone where they are at any given time. But I don't allow a lot of the other applications on their devices to have their locations. So I changed that off as well. We talked earlier about emails and all that list at the beginning that I said, these are the things that you should really be cognizant of and not sharing out there. I'm a big fan of using burner apps, and this is a software that I use called Sudo, and it allows you to create fake email addresses, fake names, fake phone number, all sorts of things on here. It's really quite handy. Again, there are others out there that allow you to do the same thing, but I love it now when my children come to me and they, gaming system where they want to, get a game or something, it's asking for an email address. They'll come to me and say, hey, Dad, can I create another sudo? Because, I need to add my email address into something. So they now know to protect, their real email address and use these burner email addresses for everything else that they don't need. So these tools are great. And again, this could be something as simple as just firing up a Gmail for something that needs access to an email address. I'm also a big fan of locking down any social media profiles. I do allow my children some access to a variety of different social media platforms, but I ask them to lock that down. So it's only friends. It's not publicly available for everybody to see. Again, I'm very cognizant of what they're sharing out there, and they're very good about this sort of stuff. But my feeling is they should only be using these social media platforms to connect with friends and do things with friends or family, and not out there in the entire public realm. So again, try to lock everything down as best that you can. Some of them you might need to open up a little bit more, but it's sort of on a case-by-case basis. And then the other thing I like to say, and again, this isn't as much of a concern for children these days because they're not really calling strangers that often. But the story that I told at the beginning with my phone ringing and how I called that person for an investigation, that was pre-smartphone days, right? That was back in the old Motorola flip phone days, where it was a lot harder to sort of make your phone number private. So these days, it's quite easy to do that. You can go in, turn off your caller ID, make that phone call that you need to make, and then turn it back on if need be. So if your children or yourself are making phone calls to someone that you don't know or whatnot, or there's maybe a little slight concern there, just turn it off, right? And then you can always turn it back on when you're calling friends, so they know that it's coming from you. So, all right. That was a lot to go through. And, like I said, if you were taking notes, I was going through it pretty fast. I like to provide a lot of information in my talks, information that you can use right now to start protecting yourself and your families. So if you were going through this and you were trying to write everything down, there was a lot there. So again, please feel free to email me. Again, we talk about not giving away your personal information. Well, obviously here I'm giving away not my personal, but my work information. So please feel free to email me, and I'll happily share a breakdown or even some of the slides. I can happily share that with you about some of the things that we talked about today. And I really do hope that you take some of these things to consideration, and maybe not do them all as one swoop. You might get some complaining from your children, but maybe piecemeal, maybe take it slow, baby steps, and just do sort of one thing at a time to sort of help protect your children and help protect yourself. So thank you very much. And I think now, if the timing is correct, yes, I think we're pretty good. We're going to open the floor for some questions.
Thank you, Ryan, for that very timely discussion and a talk. I know in this day and age where we're doing everything from online, from schooling to work to shopping to banking to socializing, this topic could not have been more timely. Our audience members have submitted some questions, and you've covered quite a few of them, so thank you for doing that. This is a question particularly for parents with children. There's a question as to what internet browser will allow parents to control age-appropriate search results.
Yeah, so I think most of the browsers do allow that. There are some browsers out there, though, that, at least in my opinion, deal with privacy a little bit better. But I think most of the browsers do allow some sort of parental control on those browsers. There are other applications out there that you can install, extensions. That's what they're called. That will help you with that as well. So whatever browser you are using, be it Chrome or Firefox, or one that I like to use for more privacy, it's called Brave. Look for those extensions, and just again Google how to install which extensions are appropriate.
Thank you. You touched upon cameras and having them inside the house or outside the house, and it being susceptible to hackers. Do you have any comments or suggestions for things like Alexa or Siri that are voice activated apps, that many people now have?
So I'm not a huge fan of having something in my house that's listening to me 24/7, and because that's what these devices do. And it's interesting. I'll tell you a bit of a personal story, and I'm not giving much away here, but even your phones in your pocket are listening to you a lot of times. I just got a new kitten a little while ago, and I named her Ritz. Again, I'm not using the name of my pet as a password anywhere, but I named her Ritz. And I remember before naming her, I was having conversations with people about naming my cat Ritz. Well, lo and behold, I started getting paid advertising on Twitter and other places for Ritz crackers. And I thought, well, isn't that interesting? And not that I have a device, but it's my phone, right? And is our devices listening to us? So again, I'm not a big fan of having something in my house listening to me all the time. However, I do think there are times that devices like that are fantastic. I have a friend who has a device like that for her elderly parents, and her parents get up every day and they say, what medication should I take today? What's going on in my schedule today? And the device will say, do this, this, and this, right? So it's a reminder with their calendar for them to do things. So again, I do think that there are valuable situations for those. But for me, I'm not a big fan of it. If I need to ask a device something, I'll just go and look up the recipe, or play the music, or whatever I want to do, or walk over and turn on my lights. I don't need a device turning on my lights for me. So that's me personally, but it's obviously a personal preference.
Okay. The next question that I have for you is, can you explain to us what cookies are, and not the chocolate chip kind, but anytime you try to log on to a website now, or download an app, the first thing that pops up is, please review the cookies. And usually, when you're trying to do these things, you're in a bit of a rush. So what are we supposed to watch out for under those circumstances?
So cookies have been around forever. This isn't anything new. The what cookies are is they are a small, bite size of data that gets put onto your computer, that helps with the loading and the speed of loading of websites and other things. Some of them do contain some information, such as the last website you went to and some other things, but for the most part, they are fairly well defined. The reason we are seeing this now and all these pop-ups now is because of various privacy laws, GDPR and others, where it is now the responsibility of organizations to inform people going to their sites that, yes, there are these tiny little cookies on here that are tracking you. You can enable your browser through various extensions, or right within the browser, to block all cookies. You can do that if you're concerned with that. It may slow things down a little bit, but there are lots of different ways to do that. From my viewpoint, there is the sort of risk and reward balance always, right? And in my viewpoint, cookies are not a major security concern that I'm going to sort of shut down all of them, because you want to do things, as you said, quickly sometimes.
Okay, so we're talking a lot about preventing security threats, or preventing hacking. My next question to you is, well, what happens if one's social media account, or their child's social media account, has been hacked? Is changing the password enough?
Oftentimes, when people get into your social media accounts, they will change the password and lock you out. So that is the concern. You are completely locked out of your social media platform, and whoever has taken it over now essentially owns it, and you cannot get in. So that is really, really challenging to do. You can contact the social media providers, but it's hard to do that, and they are inundated with these types of requests. Um, if they haven't, the attackers haven't changed the password and they've just gone on and posted something malicious, yes, you can go in, you can change the password. But also, in a lot of these platforms, you can go in and see what devices are currently using, your social media platform. What devices are, if I use LinkedIn as an example, what devices are currently logged into there, and you can manually kick them out, right? So you can go into some of these and take a look at that as well. And again, you can just Google whatever social media platform to see if you can do that. However, like I said, in the most times, attackers will go in. That's the first thing that they will do, is change that password so you're completely locked out, because they know you're going to go in and change the password to lock them out. So it's best to use password policies, so to speak, family password policies, and really, really be careful. Talk to your children about, don't give any friends access to your social media accounts. Don't share that password, because you might have a fight with that friend tomorrow, and all of a sudden they've got access to your Facebook. So protect those passwords carefully.
So, okay, and thanks for that. On that same note, what should one do if they realize that their child or their teen's safety is at risk? So either they're communicating with somebody online, they're not sure what to do next, other than saying something that probably won't work. Get off the computer, and you're banned from the computer for the next however many days. What are some steps that parents can take to sort of ensure that no harm comes of it?
Obviously, if there is a large threat to your children, the first thing you should be doing is calling law enforcement, right? Definitely. If there's a situation where you see a predator talking to your child or whatnot, yes, call law enforcement and have them investigate that. It's very challenging. like I was saying earlier with that picture I showed where somebody was masquerading as a young child. And, rather than, cracking down on your child and saying no, because sometimes that will, drive them to want to do it even more. I think just having conversations with your child to say, you think you're talking to a 13-year-old child, but it could be a 40-year-old male somewhere who wants to harm you. And they're saying all the right things and they're doing all the right things and they've shared a picture with you, but that doesn't mean that it's really who it is. And it's amazing now that when you start that conversation, you start talking to your children, they will come to you. I remember one day my daughter came to me and said, Dad, somebody's saying some very bad things and bullying me on a game. I can't remember what game it was. I think one of those ones I showed earlier. So I said, all right, let's go take a look. And I was there beside her and I said, are you in the game now? Yes. And I saw what this person was saying. Now, it wasn't a predator by no means, but it was somebody being a bit of a bully in this game, being inappropriate. So that was a real learning moment for me to be a parent and sit down with my child and say, this is no different than a bully on the schoolyard, right? Here's how you deal with it. Don't get engaged with them. Don't interact with them. Just say, I'm not going to talk to you anymore. See you later. Goodbye. It's not worth it. This is a complete stranger. It's actually easier than it is, on the school ground to deal with this, right? They're not right there in your face. You just leave the platform and go play another game, whatnot. Again, I think this is really an opportunity for us as parents to sit down and have these heart-to-heart conversations with our children as a learning moment. Don't wait for something to happen. Talk to them ahead of time.
Thank you. The next question is from our online audience members, one of our online audience members. And the question is, if you can only do one of your recommended steps, what would be the first priority?
That's a good one. I would probably say passwords would be the number one issue. Especially as your children start to get older and are using, like I said, social media platforms. You want to make sure that those platforms are well protected. So passwords would probably be the first one that I would talk about or implement out of that great list of things that I showed.
Okay, excellent. Next question from another online audience member. And the question is, we have different Wi-Fi settings for our kids for school, for gaming, etc. Gaming is blocked on school time Wi-Fi. The kids have learned to use free VPN Chrome extension to bypass our restrictions to social media and games. How can we prevent this?
So I'll tell you a funny story, then I'll answer your question. And this might just be a story that my children heard, but they did say that a child at their school, maybe it's just a story, a rumor that's floating around, but I have heard it elsewhere. A child at their school was texting or I think watching YouTube or something, and the parents were like, enough, you're in trouble, you're grounded, you can't, watch YouTube on your devices. So they said, you can't, we're taking away your devices. Well, this child realized that when the parents weren't home, they could go to their smart fridge that had a screen on it and watch YouTube on the smart fridge. So they would just sit there and watch it. So kids will get around things. They are creatures of habit of that. Again, I'm not a huge proponent of lockdowns, right? We're in a lockdown right now, but for children. But there are various Wi-Fi routers out there, and I use one of them called Amplify. There are others. And what Amplify actually allows you to do is to shut down Wi-Fi access to individual devices. So not games during a certain time, things like that on a VPN, but I shut down Wi-Fi to almost every device in the house at certain times at night, and then it fires back up in the day. And there's numerous times my kids will complain about it. Obviously, Dad, why can't, we do it longer? But at least it gives me a little moniker of control. So I know that they're not going to, regardless, they don't have their phones in their rooms at night. That's another thing. But they're not going to get up in the middle of the night, come down and grab their phone charging in the kitchen and be on games all night long. They can't because the Wi-Fi won't work on their systems. So again, there are some few little things you can do in that regard.
Thank you. The next question is about online banking. And you touched upon sort of some global things that one can do to protect themselves online. But specifically with respect to online banking, do you have any specific suggestions or ideas?
Online banking is very secure. They do use very robust encryption and security tools. And I know because we work a lot with the banks, and the banks are, take cybersecurity very, very seriously, including with, their banking apps. I think rather than being concerned about using the banking app, I would be more concerned about the devices, that you're using the banking app on. I do know a lot of people that will only use one browser, for online banking, and they won't do anything else on that browser, or only use one computer. That's a little hard these days, for online banking. But again, if you can fire up, let's say you used Firefox, if you want to fire up, Chrome or something else, and only use that for your banking, then at least if something did get into the Firefox area, you're a little bit more protected. But make sure your device is protected and not worry so much about the banking portal itself.
Okay. The next question that we have is, are free virus programs enough to protect my computer, or should I be buying a specific antivirus program? Are there any online software that you would recommend that's free and accessible to everybody for these issues?
My logic is, the motto, nothing in life is free, right? A lot of times when we get something free, be it from a software or be it, from the Googles of the world, all these great free things that they give us, we are not the consumer anymore. We are the product. And that is very challenging to when you sit back and think about that. They are not providing us with free stuff just out of the goodness of their hearts, right? They are normally, when we use these free things, collecting more information about us than you care to know. So I am more of a proponent for using paid tools. And again, they're not overly expensive. A lot of these virus tools, maybe $50 a year or something like that. Some of them are free. Like Windows Defender is a free tool that comes with Windows. Great, right? Microsoft has done a great job in that regard to provide us with that. It comes pre-baked in your machines. But if you want to install other ones, some of the other ones I showed you, some of the free services will be very, very limited and might not do as deep of a dive. Or scheduling, you can schedule, virus scans to run. So I'm a fan of using paid services.
Okay, thank you. We have a question from our online audience. Given that our cell phones are listening to our conversations, how can we stop that? Is there a way to disable that? Or do we literally have to turn off the phone?
Well, turning off the phone would help, but that's obviously challenging sometimes. Again, going into your apps, and I showed you, the photos and the camera. Go in there and see what applications are accessing your microphone. That is a big one as well, right? Shut them all off, right? There's no need for all of these. Okay, maybe you might want, if you're using FaceTime. Okay, I'm just as an example, you're going to need audio on FaceTime. Not as concerned with FaceTime as some other application that might be accessing my microphone. If you wanted to go one step further, you can disable Wi-Fi, you can disable Bluetooth, unless you're using it. But I normally don't go to that level every single time, but I do lock down my phone to only what I want to give applications access to.
Okay, and one last question, which is very timely. In the past week, I personally have gotten notifications and text messages from friends on WhatsApp saying that, WhatsApp is changing the privacy policies and we need to switch to another application, which I hadn't heard of until last week. So I'm sure you're familiar with that. So can you comment on that and how, what are we supposed to do? And with respect to migrating to another program, what are some pitfalls to watch out for?
Sure, definitely. Yeah, that is a big one. And again, I've never been a big fan of using free applications that are owned by massive social media platforms, right? And it came out a few weeks ago that yes, WhatsApp was actually giving information to Facebook. Well, Facebook owns them, right? So I've been talking about this for years now. I use end-to-end encrypted, and WhatsApp is end-to-end encrypted. but I do use end-to-end encrypted, such as Signal. That is one that is being talked about right now. There are others out there, Telegram, whatnot. This obviously is in the news right now because of all the everything that's going on in the United States. A lot of people are moving to other, encrypted chat programs. But I normally use a variety of chat programs depending on various people I talk with. I have some people on Signal that I talk to. I have some people on other platforms that I talk to, or some people that I'm not as concerned about. So I'll just use the native texting application that came with my phone, right? So it totally depends on, the level of security that I want to take. The nice thing about some of these applications, though, is they also allow you to make phone calls through them. So Signal, for example, you can make a full end-to-end encrypted cell phone or call through that platform as well. So very, very handy.
Good. Well, I think our time is up, but thank you very much for sharing informative tips on how to keep ourselves and our families secure in these times. And thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. It's an honor. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Ryan, on behalf of UT Mississauga. And thank you, Hannah, as well for moderating. To our audience, I know we didn't have time to address all of your questions, so we'd like to pose a question to you in the form of a poll. Would you like to attend a follow-up webinar or receive a recorded webinar that answers the questions that we were not able to address today? So you should see the poll on your screen now, and we'll just keep it up for a few more seconds. I am seeing an overwhelming response to yes. So we'll go ahead and end the poll now. Wonderful, thank you. So thank you so much for taking the time to answer that question, letting us know your thoughts. When the webinar ends, you'll have the option to take a post-event survey, and I do hope you'll take a couple of minutes to complete it because your feedback's really helpful to us as we plan future events. In the survey, you'll also see information about upcoming events such as Black History Month programming. Sorry, my screen just changed a little bit. There we go. Sorry, Black History Month programming, which is hosted by UT's Anti-Black Racism and Cultural Diversity Office. And you can also find the links to these events in the chat box now. Someone should be posting them right now. We hope you'll be able to join us for these events, and we hope that UT Mississauga will continue to be a lifetime resource for you to stay informed, inspired, and connected. And thank you for joining us, and we look forward to hosting you again at another UT Mississauga online event. Have a wonderful afternoon.